I'm excited too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of sculpting, tell us more about that katana in the background. How did
Yeah.
that come about? How'd you get that?
I actually got it from a store called Shields. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's right off
It's
of
like a
right across from Starbucks. Is this in
it,
Fort Collins?
it's in Loveland now, but it's
Oh, in
it's
Loveland.
a nationwide like big ol' think of like a Cabela's or a Bass Pro Shop.
Oh,
It's
cool.
sort of a competitor to those two, but they have like a knife and sword section, and my wife and I were there one day just hanging out, and we saw the katana. I was like, I gotta have that, so I bought it and took it home. But
That's
now
awesome,
it
dude.
stands up there as like a talisman and a token of it. Just Japanese Buddhist philosophy. I'm not a Buddhist or anything like that, but it's a there's a term called kensho, um, which in translation means seeing one's true nature, but it also can be broken down into its actual roots. And so ken in Japanese means sword. So you can think of kensho like sort of like identity sculpting or the Michelangelo metaphor we might get into or analogy we might get into is kind of chipping away and being precise with decisions and actions and things like that. So that's my story for it, and I'm sticking to it.
That's awesome, dude. That's a great. That's I love that visual. That's
Yeah, man.
cool. That's fun to be able to see that every day and remind yourself. You had mentioned that everyone should stop creating their own life around someone else's vision.
Mm.
What exactly did you mean by that?
Yeah, like we were talking about before, a lot of us are moving through the world and navigating life based on either our own personal assumptions of how we think we should be or how we think we are supposed to be or how usually how others think we should be or supposed to be. And really what that means is many of us are walking around, choosing career paths and relationships and making decisions and taking action on things based on usually loose definitions of what it is that we want in life or want out of life or where we want to go in life, either based on comparison and seeing somebody else's life on social media, or we all grew up watching movies and TV shows and things in the media and in Hollywood that there's characters and there's scenes and settings and environments that we want in our own life, right? Like we see uh, a movie that's set in a show like Suits, right? It's in a high rise
Yes.
and you're a lawyer, and like that's an aspect of life we can pursue if we want it.
Hmm.
And many of us, either because of what our parents or teachers or coaches or friends or colleagues or people we look up to and admire said we should do or said we should, the path we should partake on. And my hypothesis or theory or stance or opinion is a lot of what we're all seeking in terms of fulfillment or purpose or happiness or that whatever feeling we're seeking that feels good to us, that isn't the opposite of waking up excited to live our life, usually comes from carving out our own path,
Mm.
from building our life based off of what it is that we want for ourselves, right? What it is that we want for our future, for our family, for our own enjoyment of the process, so to speak. So that's my claim is, you know, sculpt out your own path, build your own path, create your life the way you want it to be.
What's an example of someone living or creating their life around someone else's vision? Can you give a concrete example of that?
Yeah, I mean, I can use my own example, right? I'll keep it to me, so I'm not like calling anybody else out here. Um, there was I started my first company in 2017, and before that, I was a junior at CSU in Fort Collins, and at the time, I was studying hospitality management, and I was kind of in a season of transition or change or just introspection into what it is that I actually wanted to do after school, right? The first couple years, I spent my first year in college playing baseball or trying to anyway. And then my second year having fun and meeting people and maybe having a little too much fun at times. And I really got serious about my life and my future my junior year of college, I was kind of doing a lot of things. I had a couple jobs. I was on the triathlon team. I was an RA, so I was managing a hall in
Oh,
one of the
dude, I was an
dorms.
RA. That's great.
Nice, dude.
Fellow
Um,
RAs.
heck yeah. So I was, I was thinking about, well, what path do I want to go down? I didn't get into business school, and I knew that's what I wanted to pursue. And I could either go the hospitality route, but after talking to even, the most senior general manager of a hotel like Hilton or Marriott, you travel a lot, you meet a lot of cool people, you network, you make a, decent living. And the majority of people I talked to who did that at the highest level never saw their family. They were always
Mm,
gone. They were always, obligated and attached to their job. And I, at the time, didn't want that path. I didn't want to experience that. And so I was like, I think this whole college thing is awesome. I love it. I had a sweet setup. I had my food paid for, my room and board paid for. I was doing a lot of cool, extracurricular activities. And I decided to jump into the world of entrepreneurship and see if I could figure it out on my own. And I was successful enough. I didn't have to go back. But in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I was kind of just following what I thought was the right way to go about things, right? And it was all based on who I was connected to at the time. Um, and so, you know, in the beginning of like a partnership, so to speak, you have a big vision and you're both like a business partnership. You're both excited about where you want to take the company and you have goals financially and, what size of team you want, what product you want to build. And, you set out to like conquer the world, so to speak. And a lot of that sometimes comes at the expense or at the sacrifice of how it is that we actually want to feel about ourselves, right? So early on when I was building my first couple companies, there was a time where I just like couldn't not think about it, where I went to bed thinking about it, I woke up thinking about it, all these problems I had to solve, all these challenges I needed to think about, all these things I wanted to try and experiments I wanted to create. And it ended up leading me into some cool relationships. But what I realized pretty quickly was that I stopped being who am and was to fit a specific role. I was pretending to be the successful business guy and like I had the ideas and I wanted to, fit into rooms and try to fit in with people that maybe had connections or maybe had something that I could get from them. And so I played a certain part so that I could have a specific outcome. And what I quickly learned is, you know, um, I'm not willing to build something or have success with something or accomplish something at the expense of my values, of my ethics, my morals, my principles. And sometimes, I think entrepreneurship and business in general is a uh, great test and practice in, are you upholding what it is that you believe about the world and yourself.
mm,
As an example, maybe a perfect example in terms of business would be cool. We're hiring overseas where we could hire someone in the US. Well, there's that common conversation. Okay, if we're hiring someone like the Philippines as an example, and they're a fantastic, programmer or software engineer, are we paying them the Filipino currency, or are we going to pay them the American currency? Are we paying for the time and energy and effort we're asking for, or are we paying what they're expecting and it's saving us a few dollars so that we can keep a little bit of profit and a little bit of revenue in our pocket, right? There's a company, 37 Signals, run by Jason Fried and David Hansen, and the way that they see it, I think, is to me the most appropriate way, which is pay for the experience. Doesn't matter where the person's coming from, that if they can do the job and do it well, and you like if you're looking for a role to be filled, don't cut corners. Essentially, don't take shortcuts. And
yeah. And
a
that's
lot
worked
of
so well
in
for
the
them.
early days I've done that, so it has worked really well for them.
It's cool. Why are we so susceptible to following a path that someone else has crafted versus our own?
Well, I can't speak for everybody. For me, it was I just didn't know any better. I didn't, and this is getting into a different aspect of my life and upbringing and things that we can get into later on in the episode. But I, I don't come from a family of successful business people or entrepreneurs or even successful professionals. My brother and I were the first two to go to college in my family.
Wow,
Um,
that's cool.
and I was the first one to not finish and pursue business and entrepreneurship and kind of be self-employed and self-sufficient, self-sustaining, which was cool and also risky and also kind of frightening and scary at times because I don't come from a wealthy background. I didn't have the resources to sustain long term. I had to learn how to communicate. I had to learn how to be of service really well. I had to learn how to um, make decisions and not let it impact me and affect me emotionally or mentally. A lot of those skills I didn't learn because I didn't have a point of reference, so to speak,
Hmm.
or a guide or a leader in my life that showed me how to do that. Some people do. Um, so for me, it
What's
was. Oh, go ahead.
what's the real cost? I mean, that's a great example. You've had this blueprint, so to speak, of the way to live life by the way that your family's done it. So,
Yeah,
what's the real cost of living by someone else's blueprint versus carving your own path like you have?
I think actually feeling. Hmm, I think it all comes back to a feeling. If we're talking about the most upstream foundational thing of what we're actually talking about, is we want to feel good about our life and feel good about ourselves. And so for me anyway, when I was living by either other people's expectations or other people's opinions or what they thought I should do or should be or should act like or think like, it was kind of soul sucking. It was I couldn't fully be me. I'm not even sure I've gotten to a place where I have fully blossomed it into like I'm like being Cam 100% totally. I'm definitely like more towards that in my life than I ever have been, thanks to my wife. And we did end up leaving, Colorado because of some of those things. But yeah, it's a sacrifice of really caring about ourselves and loving ourselves and trusting ourselves and um, I guess feeling good about ourselves is really what is at the root of all that.
If you could speak directly to someone lost in social media comparison, what would you tell them?
Mhm. Mind your inputs, as a former mentor of mine used to say. Mind your inputs, and really what my interpretation of that is, the algorithm shows you what you want to see. That's not a easy thing to stomach sometimes when we're seeing like political content we don't like, or maybe it's the woman in the red dress content we don't like, or the doom scrolling stuff, or things that stress us out, or maybe we're following someone who at the end of one of their videos or one of their pieces of content, we walk away doubting ourselves or not feeling good about where we're at instead of empowered and feeling good. And so if I were to give advice to anybody out there that's currently experiencing that, regardless of what people say about the algorithm, you can turn it into what it is that you want it to be. If I When I go on Instagram, all I'm seeing is like sunsets and dolphins jumping out of the water and like serene landscapes and farmland, because that's one, how I want to feel. Two, it's I watch baseball highlights and things like that, but it's I'm minding my inputs. I stay informed enough to be able to like make sound decisions and know what's going on in the world, but I don't let it consume me. And that really comes down to, self commitment and managing our state, managing our emotions, managing our where we're spending our mental capacity and energy. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Let's talk about identity sculpting. Can you break that down for us?
sure. Yeah, identity sculpting. Again, a former mentor kind of coined that term. It's not really. I don't think it's like their thing, but how I interpret it is, and I used a metaphor on our last conversation. I recently wrote about this too on Substack. Apparently, again, I don't know if he actually said this, but Michelangelo has a saying that when he was asked how he carved the statue of David, he says, "I didn't. I chipped away. I saw the angel in the marble, and I cut away everything that wasn't that. Essentially, right? I saw the man in the stone, and I chipped away everything that wasn't David." So when I think of identity sculpting and I think of becoming our own person that's not driven by other people's expectations or assumptions or beliefs or opinions or whatever, it really is carving away a lot of what we think about who it is that we are, meaning what mental patterns and what thought processes and what beliefs and perspectives and assumptions do we have about ourselves that aren't getting us where we want to go or aren't right here in the moment, giving us a reason to feel good about our life. If we're not waking up, excited to have a podcast or a conversation or, work on something, there's something like fundamentally unhealthy there. And I don't mean unhealthy like you have a problem that needs to be fixed. What I'm saying is there's something lingering either unconsciously or subconsciously, even consciously sometimes, that we are doing to ourselves that are keeping us in a specific state of thinking, state of being, a position in life, a way of thinking, a way of seeing the world. And we have the ability to unlearn things, as some people would say. We have the ability to cut away the things that aren't working for us so that we can become the man or woman we want to be. So that's the fundamental concept or idea behind identity sculpting. It's okay, who do we want to be? What is the, version of Cam in the stone that I want to carve? And then carving away everything that isn't that person, so that that comes down to, okay, if I'm facing a decision or I'm taking action on something, I know who it is that I want to become. Are my decisions and actions and thinking and feeling and doing in alignment with those things? If
Mm.
they are, perfect. Then I know I'm on the right path. If they're not, there's something to evaluate there.
What's the difference between building and sculpting an identity?
Hmm. I think one's deliberate and intentional, and the other is, you know, I don't know the root etymology of the words at the moment off the top of my head. That'd be cool if I did, if I could just pull that out. But when I think of the difference between the two, right, building and sculpting, think of people putting together a building, right? You have the scaffolding, you have the foundation, you have the cement layer that is the base of the actual building. And then you put on the drywall, and then you put on the windows, and you put on the roof, and then the shingles, and then you put in the insulation, and then you lay the floor. Like, I think they're one and the same. Sculpting, I think, would be an intentional, deliberate, like custom home instead of I'm gonna move into like a KB home or a Lennar plan. Sculpting is like, cool. What do I want the walls to be painted? What kind of water do I want to be drinking, right? Where do I want my sauna and my cold tub placed? Where do I, do I want what does my landscape look like? Do I want a xeriscape landscape? Do I want some grass to mow? Do I want to have like, one's intentional and deliberate and the other is there for you if you want it, I'd say. Off the top of my head, that's how I see it.
How does someone discover what system works specifically for them?
Hmm. Experimentation. And I mean that in the loosest sense, right? When I say experimentation, some people might take that literally and go experiment with things that might not be beneficial and could be harmful to their life or well-being. I don't mean that, right? That's that kind of experimentation in some ways, in specific contexts, you don't really know what it is that you like or what your preferences are until you experiment or try the thing. And the majority of us know right from wrong, good from bad in our own way, right? So again, to speak to those people that might be listening that are like, okay, Cam said experiment, so I'm gonna go try this inappropriate thing. That's not what I'm saying. Um, I'll give an example. I used to. I'll talk about diet. I think that's the thing that's at the top of mind and easiest to speak to. There was a point in my life where I, like a lot of men, I wanted to get shredded and be toned, and I wanted my muscles to show and my abs to show, and I wanted to be, peak physical fitness, as some people would say. And so I was really strict with my routine, really strict with counting calories, and I used to be on the triathlon team, so I was like 2 days every day in college with all this other stuff going on. I'd swim in the morning, I'd cycle in the evening, I'd eat in between, I had class, I had work, I had my RA responsibilities. And I got to a place where like when I didn't have the structure around that and I tried to do it in my own life without other people kind of giving me a blueprint for how it should be done, right? When you go from being in school or being in a job and now you're out on your own, you've got to kind of build the structure and foundation yourself. And a lot of the things I was doing were unsustainable. And so now I I eat intuitively, I I move intuitively, I live my life based on how it is that I want to feel. Does this feel good to me? Does this not? Right? Like there's a lot of schools of thought out there that you should wake up at a certain time, get a certain amount of sunlight, have a certain amount of, food intake or things like that. And I think that's great for some people, and some people need that just to stay sane in their own life. And for me, I'd rather do it the opposite way, where it's like if I need a nap, I'm gonna take a nap because I'm tired and I function well after I get rest, right? So um, it comes down to experimenting and I think doing the best you can with the information you have available to you. We're all learning something all the time, and yes, we have tools at our disposal that now can teach us anything we want to know. And don't beat yourself up for not knowing something, right? Like maybe there's a certain way you ought to have been training your kid or your dog so that they would have behaved the way you wanted them to, and they didn't learn the thing until it was too late. It's all good. Like we're all just doing our best. Do what you can with what you have available to you and try to stay as calm and relaxed and easy on yourself as you can. That's what I'd say.
How do we know when we found our authentic path versus when to just
Hmm.
keep exploring?
Hmm. Well, depending on the perspective that one looks at it from, right? There's the I kind of get a little spiritual and woo woo, and we can go down that path. But there's the like the the higher astral plane perspective, as some people would say, right? Like you got the things, the powers that be, the energy beyond our understanding. That's moving pieces on the chessboard that we have no control over, right? It's like the moon rotates around the earth in a specific way every single month, and believe it or not, it does actually affect the tide of the ocean and things like women have a cycle that is in unison with the moon, right? It's just a thing that is. So there's that perspective, and there are things outside of our understanding and control that are influencing how our life goes. I also believe we have free will to decide how we move through the world, right? Let's say that we all came into this experience with a plan and we had a path laid out for us, as I believe we all do, right? We're all born as these like beautiful, magical beings that see everything as magic, and everything is our first time seeing it, feeling it, touching it, sensing it. And when we're children, we're all just like, everything's exciting and everything's play and everything's fun. And then we grow up and we have different experiences, and life shapes our circumstances in different ways. For me, I didn't ever expect my family to be broken up when my parents got divorced, and then things have transpired from there. I couldn't plan that. I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 when all that was happening. Those are formative years for me, and so I understand it now, but when I was in it, it was like, holy shit, this is hell on earth. um, to answer your question, though, I think it's a feeling. I think we just know. I think we know when we're in the relationship we want to be in, or we're feeling a certain way about ourselves that we want to feel, or we're enjoying our work. We our mind isn't like bothering us all the time, and we have the ability to simply be here and be present with what's happening right now. It's things just click. It's like it's synchronistic. I think of something, and I'm thinking of a person, and they call me 5 minutes later. I am thinking about something in the shower, and then I see something on LinkedIn, and it's like, the thing is there, the idea, boom, right? Or a thought comes, and then I create a piece of content. I like to live that way, and I think that for me anyway, when I realized, cool, I'm on the right path, is when life kind of rearranged things for me so I could have what it is that I want.
When we think back to your analogy about Michelangelo cutting away pieces. What are the most common excess pieces that people struggle chipping away?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the critical voice in our head, right? It's we make a mistake, or we don't get something right, or we're rejected from a relationship or a job, or something doesn't go our way, or we don't get what we want, and we have a tendency to react instead of respond. We have a tendency to make things mean something about us instead of to us and for us. And the difference there is, when we make things mean something about us, we take it personally. We identify with it and attach to it, and then we think, this is just who I am. People like me experience things like this, and that's just, it's out of my control. When we shift that to, what does this mean to me and for me, it's cool. Well, this might be a shit circumstance. What it means to me, though, is that I'm growing, that I'm learning, that I have the opportunity and ability to sort it out for myself. I don't think there's any problem out there that can't be solved, especially now with technology and things like that, and access to information. Um, still think there's a lot we don't understand about the world, but the critical voice for sure. I think we also allow other people's opinions to affect us way more than they should. I think that that's kind of been the bulk of this conversation, right? I think what we all want to know is, am I doing okay? Am I okay? Maybe I don't have my health in order. Maybe my relationship isn't how I want it to be. Maybe my career is in shambles. Maybe this thing isn't working out the way I want it to. It's easy for us to look at someone who seems to have everything figured out and has every aspect of their life sorted out, and go, man, there's something wrong with me. I'm not doing things appropriately. I'm not doing things right. I'm not doing what I should be doing. Man, I've been I've been in places where I thought I made it, and I was on a high, and I've been knocked off that pedestal too. And what I'll say is, and this, there's lots of people who speak to this as well, but you can feel however it is that you want to feel regardless of circumstance. You can have a good time and be happy and dance and have fun when the world seems to be falling all around you. And I wouldn't say that unless I've experienced it. I wouldn't claim that. I'm not speaking from a pedestal here, like you should be like talking down to anybody. But as someone who's been through it, you can absolutely feel how you want to feel and be how you want to be regardless.
How does this philosophy, identity sculpting, manifest in your own life? You had mentioned your marriage, content creation, we were speaking earlier. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. Going back to what I was speaking to earlier about being a different version of me, just in general in life, than I really wanted to be, right? Like I didn't have there was a time in my life where I didn't have a strong sense of who I am and what I value and what I care about and what matters to me. And so I was, just drawn to things that I think a lot of us are drawn to. I was drawn to the successful business ventures. I was drawn to the opportunities that can make me the most money. I was drawn to, the pretty girl that winked at me and I'm gonna go talk to her. She must be into me. I was drawn to, you know, I'm a pretty deep person, and I think that I think and feel at deep levels of like my being. So I wouldn't say that I've had surface level interactions or experiences in life, but that part of me I wasn't proud of it. I wasn't proud of the decisions I made, the actions I was taking, the choices I was making, the people I was around, the environments I found myself in. There was a time where I would look back and go, how do I keep ending up in the same situation, just in a different, wrapped in a different suit type of thing? And when I really, understood the concept of identity sculpting, it became really deliberate. I started answering the questions: who am I? Who do I want to be? Who do I wish I was? And early on it was cool. If, what do I want 80-year-old Cam? That's pretty far out It's hard to understand and comprehend when you're not even close to that age. But that's where I would go. Is cool. Old man Cam. What do I want him to look back on his life and be proud of? What decisions is he making? What does his relationship look like? What does his career or business look like? What do his resources look like? What kind of father is he? What kind of friend, husband, mentor, son is he? And then kind of work backwards from there. And that takes a lot of self-awareness and self-discovery, because what that does is it causes you, or it caused me, to look at all the things that weren't in alignment with who it is that I wanted to be. And so I had to change the way that I thought, the way that I saw the world, the way that I moved through the world. That comes down to habits and decisions, and is all the way down to little nuanced micro things like I woke up at 8 a.m. today instead of 5 a.m. Like, how do I feel about myself in relation to that? I didn't set an alarm. I missed a call. I didn't get to have my morning routine. I didn't have my coffee or my breakfast or whatever. How do I feel about myself throughout the day? So it went from a macro understanding of, cool, this is what I'm working towards. I'm going to leave it loose, just, to as I learn more and gain new information, and maybe, we do discover that this is actually, in fact, the most beneficial way to be in this circumstance or this context, leaving it flexible and open enough to change my mind and change how I see things, while also doing my best to stay true to who it is that I want to be. Not who I am, because who I am, I'm dissatisfied with, but I'm working towards who it is that I want to be. I want to be this kind of father, right? My wife and I will be starting our family in the next few years. That's a significant level of responsibility. I've always seen it that way, right? You're going to be a parent forever as soon as you have a kid. You don't stop being dad. You don't stop being mom. And growing up the way I did, that matters a lot to me. I value that a lot, being a good parent. And so I'm starting to think about that. What does that look like? What decisions can I make now that will lead me to that outcome? So it's macro. I know the way I want to live. I know who it is I'm working towards becoming, all the way to the micro stuff, which is, maybe after this podcast, I review our conversation and I go, oh man, I wish I would have said that thing. Oh shoot, I forgot to include that. Well, am I using that as a way to like grow and experiment and change, or am I like beating myself up about it? It's the difference between those two. You know what I mean?
What specific changes might someone notice when they're living more authentically?
Mm-hmm. Things will just start falling into place. Almost as long as we're willing and able to let go of the outcome and let go of what we think things should look like. Right? And this is the kind of oxymoron, or the thing we got to be careful about here is, let's say I have 5 pages in my journal where I've written out, cool, this is like the ideal life I would love to live by the time I'm 40. And it's cool to have goals and things like that. And we have a tendency, we can use them against ourselves. Um, but as soon as we declare and define and decide, cool, this is who it is that I'm working towards becoming, things will start falling into place. Going back to the higher levels of understanding the way the world kind of works at a energetic level or a consciousness level, things will be rearranged. When I sought my wife, I defined who I wanted in a partner as well as I could at the time, while leaving it open to, you know, the universe, so to speak, to present to me something even better than I could have possibly imagined. And that's exactly what I got. But if I would have been rigid about it, I might have got something different and been unhappy or dissatisfied with it. Um, but the way she showed up in my life was, I believe, a real world example reflecting back to me that, okay, I am in fact ready for this relationship. I am in fact ready to become the man who can hold on to her, can hold on to the life we want to build, can hold on to what it is that I'm asking for. You ask for something, be careful what you ask for or wish for, because you're going to get it, right? But are you ready for it? And I don't think that we're put into circumstances or situations that we weren't built to handle. I just don't believe that's the way life works. So to answer your question, things will just start falling into place. You'll know, you'll feel it. The relationship will come, the job opportunity will come, the client will come, the bank account will fill up, the the the, the challenges will change. It's not like they're going to go away, but they'll be different. That's when I'd say you'll start to know because you'll notice if you're paying attention. Ah, that thing I asked for, holy crap, I've got it.
Share a moment where you followed a path that was risky and uncertain, but it led to something valuable.
Man, there's been several of those moments in my life. One was, leaving college, leaving university, and trying to make it in the business world with no idea how the hell it was going to work out. I've made it work. It's been a hell of a ride and a hell of a journey, and I likely wouldn't suggest it to anybody. I wouldn't
Give us some
wish
specifics. What happened? What were you working on? What were you unsure about?
Yeah, well, um, early on in my journey and career, once you make a sale, you got to provide the value and fulfill on the thing you just sold, right? You got to be able to give the people the thing that they're paying you for. And I was good at the selling part, not always great at the fulfillment part. So I had to learn that part. Um, and then we talked about, business relationships and partnerships. That's a whole other nuanced conversation, right? You've got other people involved now with different perspectives and different ways of seeing the world and different visions and different ways of communicating and different behavioral patterns. You've got to learn a whole other human being while you're learning yourself. So that was a risk in itself. Was, I could have taken the path of maybe getting a job at like a hotel or a restaurant or something, and that would have been cool. Uh, or there's a company called Inspirato, which is like um, like high end. How would I describe it? I'm totally gonna butcher it. Sorry, Inspirato. Imagine you want to go on a cool vacation. They would like set it all up for you, but then you'd have your own personal like assistant the whole time you're there. So if you go to a nice resort, you've got someone that you can dial up, and they'll get you whatever it is that you need. Really cool company that I probably could have gotten a job at. I believe anyway. I have there's a guy I grew up with that works there now. Uh, so that was a risk in itself. It was kind of like, which path are you going to take? Beyond that, outside of, you kind of make a choice to be involved in certain business opportunities or business relationships. You have a choice. When you say yes to something, you sign the dotted line or you accept the payment from somebody, you are embarking on a new journey. So every one of those is technically, a risk in some aspects because you don't actually know what's going to happen. We might have the best business plan in the world, and we might have all the funding we can ask for. OpenAI doesn't know what the hell they're doing in the next 10 years, right? But they've got the resources to take risks because they have the room to do so. They have the flexibility to do so. But not everybody's working with those same resources. And there are some of us that are actually, we have to be intentional and deliberate with our decision making. Otherwise, it can, send us down a path we don't want to be on. Outside of business, though, I mean, I think the greatest example of this is, and I've hinted at this a little bit in this conversation. When my wife and I met and we got married, it wasn't as accepted and there wasn't as much approval of it as we both wanted there to be. And for the first time in my life, I was faced with going out on my own and leaving the comfort of where I grew up and leaving behind, again, old opinions, old values, old perspectives, old beliefs, old expectations. And quite literally, I'm, for the first time in my life, my own man, which is a risk. I don't, of course, my wife and I are in love, and we have a story that's like anything beyond what I ever thought was going to be possible in my life. Like, she's a blessing in every way. And we live in a country that has the highest divorce rate in the entire world. You don't actually know if things are going to work out. You have a pretty good sense and a feeling, and a lot of us have the grit and fortitude and ambition to make things work. And it doesn't always work out that way. And so that happens with marriage. Cool. Is this actually the person? Only you can know that. Only you can make that decision. But it is a choice. And even if it's not 100% exactly what you want, you can make it work. And that's not this. None of that is in relation to my actual marriage, but just using as an example. We're always taking risks. We don't know what's going to happen. We can use our intuition. We can make sound judgment. We can use discernment. And at the end of the day, not even the people on the inside of a Wall Street uh, firm know what the stock market's going to do. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So for someone thinking, Cam, this sounds great, but where do I even start? What's some practical advice you'd give?
Yeah, it's a simple evaluation of life. Take a look at the things that you are, and again, this is nuanced, but dissatisfied with, unhappy with. What things are you not enjoying about who you are, or the life you're living, and either change the way that you are showing up to them, right? The perfect example of this is if you have a job that you're not excited about, it's a simple perspective shift. Is it actually the job, or is it the perspective you have about you in relationship to the job? We can make the we can make a shitty situation awesome if we want to, and it simply starts with who we are and how we show up to it. So, is it actually the job, and you actually need to leave an abusive situation, or are you just like, this sucks, I could probably go do something else? Neither is right or wrong. And put it into perspective, there is a vast majority of the population currently that are looking for jobs, who would do anything to have employment right now, do anything to have income coming into their life. So before you make a decision that's like leaving a relationship or leaving a job, or moving to a new city, or whatever it's going to be, starting a new diet, ask yourself the fundamental questions. It starts with, who am I? What do I want? Why am I here? What is this all about? And then really look at yourself. Do some self-awareness and self-discovery, work, and be honest with yourself. Is this me, or is this a situation? And am I bringing who it is that I know I could be to it? Or is this actually something that I need to change because it's harming me, or literally like doing me a disservice in life? Those are two fundamentally different things. I think a lot of us make decisions just because we're unhappy with it, when it's probably not the thing, it's probably how we are in relation to it.
For someone who's in the pit of despair, trapped in life, and they feel like, man, I don't like this life. Like, how did I get here? What's the first step?
Slow down, pay attention, be present. What is reality? Are you actually in the pit of despair, so to speak, right? Are you actually in a situation where you feel like you're in danger, where you feel like you're nothing in your life is working out, right? And there's a difference. And I'm going to get kind of a little extreme here. I don't mean to knock anybody off balance, or go in any, specific direction here. There's a difference between growing up in an environment and context like someone in, let's say, Gaza, or someone in Compton, or someone in the south side of Chicago, or someone who has an abusive alcoholic parent, or they're actually in an abusive relationship and they're afraid to make a decision because who knows what the consequences are going to be. And then there are situations where, I look in the mirror and I don't like what I see, or I wake up and I'm not feeling good about who I am, or I show up, I put my full effort and heart into my work and it's not appreciated, or it's not respected, or validated, or I'm not receiving the recognition I think I should be. Again, it's all perspective. Are you actually in the pit of despair and you are actually in a situation where you need to make a change? First thing I would say is make the change. Do the thing that seems scary and seems harmful or uncomfortable, because what's on the other side of that is something that you can't even foresee but is likely better than where you're at now. Um, and you have choice to make do with what it is that you have. So that's what I'd say. Slow down, pay attention, be present, take inventory and stock of your life actually, and be honest with yourself. Is this actually a dire situation that needs changing, or am I the one that needs changing?
Mhm. What's one thing you hope that the listeners take away from today?
Ah. Mhm. In essence, I'd say you're okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need fixing. It might not feel good. Your circumstances might not be the most ideal. You might be listening to this and be like, you know what, Cam, I'm not actually okay. I don't appreciate that. You're not like taking my situation into consideration. And they're probably right. I don't have the context. I don't claim to have insight into people's lives like that. Um, and from my own personal experience as someone who's, been there and done that and gone through all the horrible feelings and situations and things that I thought I'd never get out of. Um, as long as you're alive, you'll get what it is that you want. Just stay alive. Stay alive and keep putting one foot in front of the other and do the best you can.
It's so good. Cam, it's been great having you on, man.
Likewise, man.
For the
Thanks.
listeners, you want to hear some of Cam's journal, or rather read some of Cam's journal, definitely check out kinshowcraft.com. Where else would you want listeners to come connect with you, Cam?
Yeah, most platforms. LinkedIn's my favorite at the moment. That's where I'm most active. I write on
Cool.
Substack. My Substack's called Seeing One's True Essence. Writing.kenshowcam.com. Twitter, Instagram.
Love
Yeah.
it. Awesome. Cam, that was great. Really appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me, man. Cheers.
Dude, you